What's up, everybody? Welcome into DodgerHeads, presented by DodgerBlue.com, part of the Medium Large Sports Network. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined today by Daniel Starkand, here to talk about an interesting report from Bob Nightingale. Daniel Nightingale reporting that the Dodgers have had and have now tabled trade discussions for Luis Robert Jr. that centered around James Outman and a prominent prospect of some sort. What was your immediate reaction to seeing this? Surprised at all that the Dodgers are pursuing a guy like Robert?
I'd say my immediate reaction was I had to look at the date. Like, you don't really see, like, it's not really trade rumor season right now. And I guess it wasn't really specific about when these talks took place. Like, it could have been November, December, could have been last week. Like, who really knows? But I will say the Dodgers probably, the way things are looking, they might be in need of a bat before the deadline. And center field specifically, or one of those up the middle positions, and a guy who could actually play defense. We'll get into it, but I do think there is a fit there. But yeah, always a little surprised when we're 3 weeks into the season and we're already getting these kind of rumors trickle out.
I'm with you. I don't think I've ever heard a prominent trade rumor that's being discussed we're not even halfway through April when this report is coming out.
Yeah.
Again, Outman and a frontline prospect was the language that Nightingale used. And we're going to get into Luis Robert himself here in just a moment and the fit. But I don't think any Dodger fans are going to be surprised that they're exploring all avenues when it comes to second base, shortstop, and center field, as you said, the up the middle positions, because they just haven't found for production from Andy Pages or Kike Hernandez or guys in the minor leagues like James Outman, who maybe they were hoping. Ha-Seong Kim, maybe, but not up at the major league level yet.
Insert name here they haven't received production from.
Exactly. Fair. Anybody outside the top four guys basically in this lineup have been pretty disappointing. But again, the other non-surprising thing is this is a guy that's been linked to the Dodgers, it feels like, for the last 18 months. The White Sox aren't any good. Luis Robert Jr. has an interesting contract in that he's in the final official year of his deal, making $15 million, but he has 2 club options for $20 million a year for the next 2 years. This is a guy that, if many people who follow the Dodgers would know, the Dodgers are interested in superstar potential type players. Yeah. He had a 5-win season back in 2023. So the highest ceiling version of Robert Jr. is a superstar, Daniel. So let's get into the player himself. We know it's not surprising they're looking at a center fielder. It's not surprising they're talking to the White Sox, a team they've made a number of trades with. Are you interested in Luis Robert Jr., the player himself?
Yeah, I think you kind of started to break it down there pretty well. Like, he's not a perfect player by any means, but he does have a really high ceiling. And that's typically the type of player that the Dodgers, look to go after, guys that they feel that if they unlock, they could get like top of the line MVP type production. And that's what we've seen from Robert. Like, obviously he's on the White Sox. So, I feel like you kind of have to take all of his statistics just with a grain of salt, just because going to work every day, like, he knows what team he's on, and there's probably not a whole lot of motivation there. And obviously you bring him on board to the Dodgers, it's a much different environment. So if there's any place where he could get right and have the 5 win type season like you were talking about that he had a couple years ago, it would be to bring him over to an organization like the Dodgers. So like, like I was saying, he's not a perfect player, but there is a lot to like. And if you could unlock that, then you have you figure out your center field position, which has been something they've been looking for a while here now. He does give you really, plus defense out there. He's really good on the base pass, and he has potential at the plate, and he's shown that potential. He's got light tower power. There's just a ton of swing and miss in his game, which that's why I don't think the fit is exactly perfect, just because we have kind of seen the Dodgers go away from their old approach of bringing in guys who work counts, work walks. Like, Tommy Edman does not, I don't think he has a single walk this year, not many. Teoscar likes to swing. Even Shohei loves to swing away. So if you're adding another one of those guys to your lineup, like, the fit isn't perfect, but I do think from a talent standpoint, and you mentioned the contract as well is appealing. I do think you're probably not going to find a better option out there as far as who's going to be available between now and the deadline. So I do like it. What we could get into the cost and stuff. Like, I'm not going overboard with all our top prospects or anything, but obviously a guy like him with his talent, it is going to cost something.
Robert Jr. is so fascinating because it's the tale of two different sections of this guy's career. If you look at 2021 through 2023, across those 3 seasons, he played 311 games, basically the equivalent of back-to-back 155 game seasons. He spread them out across 3. He was a 10.5 win player over that stretch. So we're talking about a guy that's 129 weighted runs created plus, so a 30% better than league average offensive player, and also an elite defensive player who, as you said, has speed as well. These are the types of players the Dodgers go out and they try and acquire. Yeah. They don't typically aim for, hey, give us a guy who's slightly better than average. They tend to go after superstars, or at least guys with superstar potential, where it's like, if it doesn't work out, then we move on. But if it does hit, then we hit the jackpot. The problem for Luis Robert Jr. is 2024 and 2025, over the last 114 games, Yikes. He's one of the worst players in Major League Baseball.
Yeah.
We're talking about a guy that if 100 is league average when it comes to weighted runs created plus, over the last 2 seasons, he's an 80. He's 20% worse than league average. He's hitting 217 with a 275 on base and a 364 slugging percentage with just 15 home runs in 2/3 of a season. Yes, the defense has been good and the speed has been good, but realistically, the joke to me is like, that sounds like James Outman numbers, what I just read to you. We're talking about a guy who has elite defense and high speed, but who's 20% worse than league average offensively. That sounds like Outman. So if you believe you're getting 21 through 23, Luis Robert Jr., pay up. If you think you're getting 24, 25, don't come near it. And that's the mystery, right? Because what if it's somewhere in between? What if it's a guy who's around league average offensively? Are the White Sox going to value him at that point? Which is where we get into the conversation about draft capital, or compensation. Outman, nobody's, I don't think, going to lose any sleep over it. If I'm the White Sox, I understand going after a guy who has a number of years of control and who's proven at the major league level at one point that he could hit. The question, Daniel, is the next prospect. I'll go out and say this. There's no chance the Dodgers are going to trade Dalton Rushing as part of a trade package for something like this. I think Josue DePaula, Zaire Hope would both be off of the table as well. I would imagine a bunch of the guys you've seen at the major league level, like, or I shouldn't say all, but like, I don't think River Ryan would be included in a package for him. Where it gets interesting is like, would Jackson Ferris be available in a trade for a guy like this? Would Alex Freeland be available in a trade for a guy like this? That's where, when they're asking for a frontline prospect, I think it gets interesting.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, obviously, I feel like this guy's been on the trade block for a while here, and the reason he hasn't been dealt is probably just because the White Sox do value him like that, the superstar player that he was from, 2020 to 2022 or whatever, whatever those numbers you read off. The fact of the matter is he just hasn't been that guy, so no one is gonna, pay up for what he is. But if you're the White Sox, you're so far out from a rebuild that at a certain point you just gotta take the best offer and trade him. And given the depth in the Dodgers system, like, that might be the best offer. Like, you're not going to get a top prospect, I don't think, from any team. But if the Dodgers do have pieces that are either major league ready right now or close to it, that if you're a team like the White Sox, like maybe you go with a quantity over quality package where you're taking like 3 or 4, mid-tier type prospects, like James Outman, Robleski could be an option who he could go and be in their rotation right away in theory. Guys like that where, like you said, I'm not trading Jackson Ferris, for Luis Robert. I'm not trading River Ryan. I'm not trading Josue DePaula. Like, those guys, for me at least, I wouldn't be even thinking about trading those guys for a Luis Robert. So it would have to be a more quantity over quality package. And who knows if that's what the White Sox want. But just because Luis Robert is such a high variance player, like, I'm not gonna give them the superstar package because in theory he could be really bad the rest of this year, and then you're declining those options, and then it was just a rental, So
I'm glad you said that.
The potential's there, but you really just don't know with this guy.
I'm glad you said that about the contract, because there is value in that the Dodgers are not locked into anything. If they were to acquire him, it could be a 1-year deal or 2 or 3, and all of the power rests in the Dodgers. But at the same time, the last year and a half we've seen this guy play, he hasn't been worth $20 million a year, even if he's as good defensively as they mentioned. So let me just throw some names out there. James Outman again, has been mentioned as a
Yeah.
centerpiece. Like, would you trade Bobby Miller? Like, well, I know that's a name that's diminished its
Yeah.
value, but we know where the velocity is. We know where the stuff is. We've seen it at the major league level. Like, if it was Bobby Miller, James Outman, and then, another sort of maybe lottery ticket type player, like, do you think that's A, something the White Sox would accept? And B, is that something you'd be offering?
Yeah, I don't know if the White Sox would accept it. I would probably do that at the end of the day. I would probably offer Robleski first, just because I do. I'm not high on Bobby Miller, but I do think there is a chance that he gets right and ends up being the best
Yeah.
of kind of that Bobby Miller, Robleski, Landon Knack type group. Like I think
Yeah.
Knack and Robleski, they're kind of similar to Luis Robert. Like they're not ceiling type guys. They're kind of, just
Cool.
steady back of the rotation maybe, but Bobby Miller is kind of the pitching version of Luis Robert, where when it's right, he could be really good, but obviously it hasn't been right the last couple of years. So I do think that might be a fair type of deal for both sides, where if you're the White Sox, you think you could repair Bobby Miller and James Outman and get them back to where they were 2 years ago, where both of them, I think, were in the Rookie of the Year race that year. And if you're the Dodgers, you're saying, hey, we want to get Luis Robert back to where he was 2 years ago, and then we have our center fielder for the next 3 years.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, it's interesting because, like, is Ben Kasparius a name that you would potentially move? You mentioned Landon Knack as another name. Those are the type of interesting things, because we know what Kasparius' stuff is, and I'm ignoring the million earned runs he gave up the other night against the
Yeah,
Cubs, but it's going to cost you something. It's going to
sure.
cost you something to go and get him. And so it's easy to sit here and say, well, no, 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 no. It's like, okay, well, that's probably why discussions have been tabled,
Yeah,
because what the White Sox are asking for today is not what the Dodgers are willing to give up. And they're playing a game of chicken. The White Sox are betting that Robert gets better and the price goes up. And the Dodgers are saying, well, if he does this for another month, our offer is going to go down. And
yeah,
so that's what I think makes this game so interesting. But again, Nightingale's report is that apparently there were discussions. They have tabled trade discussions that would send center fielder Luis Robert Jr. to the Dodgers for James Outman and a frontline prospect, which means there were discussions, according to Bob Nightingale, and those discussions are no longer happening. And so I interpret that, Daniel, is that it's going to be a little while, that maybe we're
yeah.
not waiting all the way to the trade deadline because things have already started to move. But I mean, I would be shocked if a move is made before even the end of May. That's 6
Yeah.
weeks away, but it feels like we're at least 6 weeks away from the Dodgers doing something to me.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. They're going to play the long game here. Like they're not in the business of overpaying at this point in time. And I do think at some point, maybe in the next few weeks or in a month or so, as long as Hai-Sung Kim keeps hitting at the AAA level, they're going to give him his shot at the big league level, because if he comes up and is able to give them any sort of production,
Yeah.
and let's say you put him at second base and move Tommy out to center field, or vice versa, however you want to position them, that might kind of solve some of the issue there. And that's a guy you went out and signed this offseason with that being the intention. I know, it's going to take a little time, but he has looked good at the AAA level. So I do think, they'll probably exhaust all their options internally, first. And then if it gets a couple months down the road and, Andy Pajes isn't hitting, like, none of these guys are hitting, and it becomes a real dire need, then maybe they, up their offer or whatnot. But yeah, I do think they'll kind of keep an eye on Robert, because like you said, his season could go a variety of different directions, and we never really know where he's going to be a month from now. But I definitely think that's something they'll keep an eye on. And if none of these internal options are working, they'll explore it.
And I hope you're right, because I hope it's, let's just see if we can solve this, because you've kind of got, I would even argue, 4 shots at this thing, figuring it
Yeah.
out internally. Option 1 is Andy Pajes figures it out. How likely that is, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, right? Option 2 is Ha-Sung Kim has looked good defensively. The bat has been there. We know AAA numbers tend to be inflated. Can he actually translate it to major league level and major league pitching? Who knows? Option 3, and I would say maybe option 2, is Alex Freeland, one of their top prospects, a guy we just mentioned, could probably play second base, has played, I'm sure, second base at some point in his life, and has performed even better than Ha-Sung Kim has at AAA, is highly rated, is expected to make his debut at some point. And heck, even option 4, like, I'm the only guy left, I think, holding out hope that James Outman figures something out down at AAA and just gives you something offensively to justify, hey, at least you're getting plus defense and, plus speed, and we'll just take whatever you can get offensively. Like, I think all 4 of those things would have to go wrong. And so far, you could argue they have, Kim and Freeland have performed well, but haven't proven anything. But if any one of those things goes the Dodgers' way, or Kike Hernandez, I would add Kike Hernandez figuring it out, and he could play second base or center field. Like, I think all those things would have to go wrong for this to be a major problem. So far, they haven't. None of those things have gone right. Remains to be seen. Let us know what you think in the comments below. A, are you interested in Luis Robert Jr.? And be honest, it's easy to sit here and say, well, I would only give these guys. Like, what's the most valuable prospect you would be willing to pair with James Outman in a deal for Robert Jr.? Put that in the comments below. That is Daniel Starkand. I am Jeff Spiegel, folks. Thank you for joining us. Again, this is Dodger Heads presented by DodgerBlue.com. Enjoy the rest of your night and go Dodgers.